Theoden is one of the most beloved characters among the Lord of the Rings fans, and perhaps one reason for that is that his story mirrors our own everyday struggles. Because even if we don't rule over a grand kingdom, at the very least we are called to govern our own lives, our homes, our families, and the small realms entrusted to us. And just like Theoden, at some point in our lives we too can fall under the serpent's tongue, the lowly whispers, the bad advice, or the influence of people who drag us down. They might be friends, relatives, or voices that appear to care for us, but in truth, they often serve their own interests, or worse, are driven by something darker, a greater evil. The corruption that Saruman embodied in the story, and as Tolkien wrote, is an evil that seeks to twist the natural law and to bend creation itself to its will. When we give in to that, when we let those voices rule us, we become spiritually dead. We lose our life not in body, but in soul, drowned in sin, enslaved by the whispers we chose to trust. It's no coincidence that at these moments, light must come, or rather, someone bearing the light, perhaps a wise figure with a white staff, to drive away the darkness clouding our eyes and remind us, not everything in life is shadow. In this sense, Theoden receiving his sword is a symbolically reminder that every moment of our own lives, too, are a battle. Even in the smallest, most ordinary actions, like resisting the urge to hit the snooze button, we're constantly and inevitably fighting a war against our lower nature. And even after breaking free from the pit of darkness, fear still may come, the fear of facing evil, of confronting the threats that rise before us. But Theoden's arc teaches us that hiding or running away, as he tried to do in Helm's Deep, will never save us. We must face it. We must fight. Or in his case, literally ride out against the darkness itself. Only then can we claim victory, and find true freedom. Once we achieve that, when we learn to rule ourselves and face evil with courage, then we can finally serve others. Then we can fight for our community, because goodness wants to count on us to endure. And perhaps the most beautiful part of Theoden's journey comes in the final chapter of his story. The odds of victory were slim. His army was smaller, weaker, surrounded by the forces of Sauron. But unlike the steward of Gondor, who hid and surrendered to despair, Theoden chose to ride out, not because he believed he could win, but because he believed it was right to fight. Even knowing death awaited, he charged forward with honor, leading his people one last time. His victory wasn't in survival, it was in courage. In freely offering his life so that others might live. Always remember, we can be knights of Theoden too, riding against the darkness of our own times, carrying the light of hope into the storm. As J.R.R. Tolkien himself said, in his own voice, when reading the Ride of Theoden at the end of The Return of the King,
There came rolling over the fields a great boom. At that sound the bent shape of the king sprang suddenly erect. Tall and proud he seemed again, and rising in his stirrups he cried in a loud voice more clear than any there had ever heard a mortal man achieve before, "Arise, arise, riders of Theoden! Fell leads awake fire and slaughter. Spear shall be shaken, shield be splintered, sword day, red day ere the sun rises. Ride now, ride to Gondor!" And straightway all the horns in the host were lifted up in music, and the blowing of the horns of Rohan in that hour was like a storm upon the plain, and a thunder in the mountains. Ride now, ride to Gondor!